Hey everyone, welcome to PunkCast. My name is William Maxwell. I'm a student of Web3 and the owner of Punk7865. CryptoPunks are 10,000 uniquely generated characters stored permanently on the Ethereum blockchain. No punk is the same. This is a show dedicated to celebrating the punks behind the punk. My hope for this podcast is that we capture the essence of the punk culture, elevate the brand and the individual behind the punk. One last thing. Projects discussed on the show is not financial advice. Crypto and NFTs are a volatile and risky asset class. Please always do your own research. Other than that, let's go. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of PunkCast. Today we're back with Punk7865. With 380s, he's got messy hair, eye mask, and a luxurious beard. In real life, he's a collector, founder of NxGDEN, a venture capital fund, and also a fellow investment member of Punk Ventures Dao. Please welcome Simple Simon to the show. Simon, how are you?
Hey, pleasure to meet you. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invite. And yeah, looking forward to the conversation with you today.
Mate, I have to say, and I know people can't see what you look like, but I've got to say, you look exactly like your profile picture with a luxurious beard going on.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually part of the story about my punk is I've been searching for one that looks like me. And yeah, it was like sort of an 8-9 month hunt. I found one guy, his name is Cyrus, on Twitter, and I wrote him, and I just saw him into 28 pumps in 2017, and he just got back. He's like, sorry, I'm not selling any. And that was like the one that actually had the glasses. And then I kept searching and finally found one that came to the market. It's more like the bandana. And yeah, managed to get it and been happy ever since. That's sort of my digital representation of my punk.
Amazing. For the listeners out there too, Simon is actually wearing an eye mask as well as we speak. So if you see him on the streets of London, that might be him. Well, maybe to kick it off and welcome, really glad to sort of have another Punk Ventures member on PunkCast as well. But maybe to kick off the conversation, and it might be a self-explanatory one, but just curious as to how you came up with your online moniker of Simple Simon.
Yes, this actually goes back to my business studies more than 10 years ago. Maybe had an old British marketing professor who had this framing, or this just sort of stuck in my head, which was called KISS, the principle of keep it simple, stupid. And because of my life, I realized the intersection of tech, legal, economics, and so on that we're dealing with crypto and blockchain is super difficult, specifically depending on the stage that you have driven into it. So with the newcomer, trying to explain Bitcoin and blockchain to them is not so easy. So I've always, since I've worked in sort of innovation or tech for a long time, tried to find ways to simply explain something like blockchain and Bitcoin to, let's say, a Fortune 500 CEO or to someone I worked in Germany with DAX, which is the equivalent DAX 30 companies, and trying to bring the message to them of what we're dealing with here and why this makes sense. And this is why we had to simplify and translate between tech to business and vice versa. And that's sort of where the original idea came from, and then it stuck with me. And yeah, I'm still always trying to just simplify stuff, because in crypto specifically, we love making stuff very, very difficult and complex and hard to understand, which for hard things can be good, but ultimately, if you want a broad range of users and to talk about mass adoption, and we have been talking about it for the last 8 years, maybe 3 years more prominently, that is something that will be needed, right? It needs to be simple application, social fine, stuff like this, that really will help us cross the chasm to mainstream. And the simpler the better, I believe. I could give another range of examples, but I think you get the point. There's online banking apps where you have 5 steps to sign up, and that's sort of what we need in crypto as well.
Yeah, totally. I think as you're talking, you're right. I think in the crypto space, I think we probably do ourselves a lot of disservice by overcomplicating things. But I think the reality is that it's very easy to make things complex, but conversely, it's very hard to make things easy. And so, I think you need to be really super smart and switched on to make things simple for, I guess, the various audiences that we're sort of speaking to. Fantastic. So Simon, I'd be interested to learn a bit more about, I guess, more about you and your backstory, I guess, before we get onto the crypto component in terms of all the things that you're sort of doing now. But, it'd be interesting to sort of hear about, where you grew up, what you studied, and, I guess your sort of path and journey sort of pre-crypto.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to share parts of it. So I grew up in, back then I would say East Germany, and consider myself East German if someone asks where I'm from. And actually, I come from the city where one of the first the DAO members founded the DAO, which was Christoph Jentsch. And yeah, that's coincidentally, and found my way into crypto in 2013 the first time when I was doing my business studies and later on data science studies, my master's in Berlin universities with a fellow roommate who was like a math geek and really into crypto. He was mining Dogecoin, Bitcoin, and that's sort of when I first touched it a little bit. And then I really got into it when I was doing my master's in data science in 2014, 15 approximately, and really learned about data structures and the interesting part of what blockchain can do, right? You can only write and read, but you cannot change and delete, which is super interesting from a database perspective. And I then started working with a company called BigchainDB out of Berlin. They were the predecessors of Ocean Protocol. I had done Ascribe before. Ascribe was in 2014. It was like digital art on the Bitcoin blockchain. Sounds familiar, right? Now we call it NFTs and it's on Ethereum. But back then they realized, Bitcoin is too expensive, became too expensive. They founded BigchainDB, which is supposed to be like a big data storage database, which didn't really work out 100% as planned. And then they pivoted to Ocean Protocol, this like sort of data marketplace, right? And then moved to a company that was one of the first business hires and shareholders next to two tech founders, where we tried to sort of build an IoT and blockchain and distributed network use cases for the industry in Germany. So we worked with the likes of Porsche and Daimler and many other sort of top DAX companies. Unfortunately, that didn't really succeed because trying to do sort of crossing the innovation chasm is very, very difficult in blockchain because applications only make sense once you have a multi-shareholder system, and that is usually on the top strategic level of a big corporation. And then trying to align interests of multiple corporations in a consortium, logistics, supply chain, it's very, very challenging. So we sold part of the company, sort of had like a turnaround in 2019, and I left around that time. They're now doing AI, trying to do this with a network. They're doing federated machine learning, which is obviously today, 5 years later, a really interesting topic again, 5, 6, 7 years later. Yeah, and then I worked a lot with the Polkadot ecosystem because we were working with Parity closely back then, the Rust nodes, and working with a company called Killed. So we helped them with fundraising and stuff like this. And we had a little consulting firm, doing similar stuff for different blockchain ventures, different Polkadot power chains and things like this, helping them with ecosystem development and similar things. And started investing myself. And more actively and sort of starting to become an angel investor. And then met my current business partner sort of during COVID in the yield farming group in DeFi Summer. And we invested actively together and trying to help projects where we can, active angel investors during that time. And then sort of 2 years forward, we started to think about professionalizing what we have been doing. And that's what we did, and founded NxGDEN. It's like a small, I wouldn't call it venture fund, more like a mini family office, if you want, that is run by ourselves with our own money. Yeah, it has its ups and downs as crypto has, and it's an interesting roller coaster, but we really try to provide value, or we join different DAOs, Punk DAO, for example. And we are working on a product ourselves, which I can't talk too much about, but it's like towards the direction of trying to help bring more transparency and sort of, let's say more accountability to crypto for the next run, so that, we hopefully can avoid some of the things that happened in the past, and helping to support that. I've written research papers about blockchain and crypto in the past. I wrote my thesis about privacy and blockchain and GDPR in Europe. I wrote a paper about CDBCs a few years back with Chainlink and with a big German fund and a think tank of Germany. This was 2 years ago. So also trying to contribute on other levels with some research every now and then, but full-time mostly investing and sort of learning about crypto, helping founders, teaching, mentoring founders. I'm part of different accelerators where we help to mentor young founders. I think that's probably my favorite thing to do, is like really helping founders solve hard challenges and connecting them with the right people at the right stage. This is sort of what our bread and butter is. Because crypto is difficult and challenging, and the ecosystem is, is smaller than you think, but also really big. And, you have to find and get to know the right people everywhere. But it's where they're coming from.
Wow, that's an impressive CV you've got there, Simon. So many different sort of well-known projects that you sort of mentioned there that you sort of been involved with. But maybe if we go back a little bit further, just around your decision around studying data science. I mean, that's a pretty heavy topic and discipline to sort of get into. Of all the things you could have chosen, like, why did you decide to delve into data science? Like, was there something about that you found intricate and special when you were growing up? Like, what was your thought process growing up towards that sort of discipline?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I mean, to be honest, shedding a bit of light of my ego. When I started studying business, I was like, I want to become an investment banker and do all these things. And I met a few investment bankers along my studies, and also did work for a bank for a little bit during my studies, and realized it's not sort of the sort of people I want to hang out with too much. I mean, some of them were nice, but I just, at least, maybe I just somehow happened to come across the wrong ones, Since then I've met some really lovely ones. And also I realized that it sort of intellectually doesn't fully fulfill me. So I really wanted to do something with tech, and was always interested in a bit of coding towards the end of my bachelor's finance studies. And then said I want to dive into that. I also had a few other masters lined up, but ended up deciding for the data science path. Which was really fun, to be honest. It's a really good. In Germany, we have these sort of universities that are very hands-on. So like every semester you have a project. There's an actual project. So we did project with telecom, with a research institute, with an actual data science startup to learn data science, right? So we would learn and work at the same time, which was really, really great because you just get full hands-on experience, right? It's not all theory. That's the reason behind it. I knew tech is the future, and then I decided to work on the intersection of the two, because doing full-time tech, I also think, since I'm more generalist, I can go quite deep, but I don't think at that stage I wanted to go too deep, because I personally have this thesis that I believe in which if you go super, super, super deep in a topic, like if I talk to brilliant smart contract developers or core developers of Ethereum or whoever, or different protocols, you have the challenge of the deeper of your specialization you go, I believe the harder it becomes to have a bird's eye view and have a generalist oversight. So I made the conscious choice of saying, okay, if I dip deeper, I will lose all of the above view, and hence sort of have a certain level of depth, but also admit if I don't know my things anymore. If you go deep into zero knowledge proofs, I have no clue what you're talking about, and I'm happy to stand for that, as long as I know how they sort of work conceptually. So that's the background.
No, that's super cool, man. And then, so when did you discover Bitcoin? Because I think you said you studied your master's in 2014-15. Were you looking into Bitcoin at that time at all, or like when was your sort of first dabble into blockchain and in space?
I came across Bitcoin just because of my roommate, but I didn't take it too serious, to be honest. I've made a mistake a few times in my past. Heard it from a few friends. They were just like hardcore geeks that really loved it, and they just thought it was fun, and they were playing online games and got rewarded in it. I got paid once. I did online poker to partly finance my study, so I got a little bit of access to Bitcoin, but as many poker players did. But I didn't go to the top leagues, but more like semi long hours at night.
When was that?
That was about 2012, 2013, I would say. Wasn't like, to be honest, I didn't do it because I fully understood its potential. It was more like I found it interesting. It was a necessity, but it didn't fully get me yet. I would describe people that get into blockchain, I describe you can fall into a black hole and that will eat you. So once it makes click, it's really hard to let go and leave it. So that wasn't that moment just yet. That only came around 2014, 15. Ethereum started as well. And I read the Ethereum paper. That was super, super exciting. But yeah, I was more on the building side for most of the early years, let's say.
Nice. So can you you're actually got skills to code as well and build products?
Briefly, I wouldn't say maybe on the product side a little bit more when it comes to product management and product ownership, but less so on the coding side. I did it during my studies, and I realized I wasn't good enough in that at that point. I would have had to do another master's or something in math or go down a different path. That's why I realized, okay, I want to stay on my generalist level because I found it interesting. And yeah, but for the time being, I didn't want to dip that deep.
That's cool. So that was, you discovered it in around 2012, 2013, didn't really pay attention to it. You did your master's in data science. And then at what point did you, take the red pill and go deep? Like when were you sort of brought in on crypto and the space?
Yeah, I would say probably in 2015, more for the tech or blockchain technology itself, less than though for crypto, if you can differentiate that. So we did like a standardization thing on taxonomy on blockchain and crypto. I would say blockchain is really just the technology behind it, right? And like proofs and hashes and stuff like this. And where crypto people would consider all the, like, let's say financial applications, right? Or the tokens and so on. So I was more interested on the blockchain technology itself than initially on the crypto side of things. And that maybe happened a year later when ICO started, that sort of stuff. And then, yeah, incentive systems really interested me and did a lot of work in token design direction and helped a few projects design the token economies later on. And yeah, I mean, when it came to NFTs, I had some friends telling me 2017, hey, look, there's like this CryptoPunks. And back then I was like, yeah, this sounds a bit silly. I was just focused on a very different topic. I was just like, yeah, who would use a pixelated image as a profile photo? It's a bit strange. And then a few years later, I realized, that I sort of maybe didn't pay enough attention to that sector, but I was just really focused on DeFi and different application space, specifically like cross-chain and Polkadot and these sort of things. But yeah, so NFTs really only happened 2021, I would say.
What's going on with Polkadot? Because I'm still holding bags from Polkadot from 2 or 3 years ago as well. But are they doing anything anymore? Are they still active? I haven't heard much from the ecosystem. I know the parachain, auction sort of went live towards the back end of last year, and I got into a few of those, but they don't seem to be getting a lot of activity on there, right? Like, with Moonbeam and Akala and all those guys.
They had a lot of structural challenges, let's say, that they had to resolve from having like a Web3 foundation and the parity, being different organizations and stuff like that. There's some leadership challenges that they had to overcome. But overall, I would say if you look at the lifetime of them launching, and they had to launch a little bit prematurely because of sort of, it was a bear market, it was investor pressure. They had the big hack with parity. A lot of funds got frozen. I don't know if you remember that an intern wrote a wrong line of code and accidentally froze the parity multisig wallet with 250 million in it, right? And this was like before the last bull run. So all these things played into it, right? So then they had to launch. And if you consider the time since they launched where we are today, they still have, I think, the third or second biggest active developer community still as to date, maybe next to something like Tendermint and Cosmos. They're just building. Like I know a lot of people there that work there on the top leadership positions in parity, and I know there's a lot of stuff going on. They are really professionalizing themselves into like a properly run, well-structured business organization. And sort of in crypto organizations, you often have the problem of you start with like hardcore believers, tech nerds, and stuff like this, and then Solana was a good example, which actually did it really well with like business execution, right? And I think they are now jumping to the part of improving their execution layers. They're getting in like, I don't know, top CMOs and ex-consultants, McKinsey consultants, people like that, just to sort of further professionalize structuring what they're doing. And also over the last couple of years become such a competitive landscape. Is layer 0, obviously Cosmos is there. Like, is interoperability really the long-term solution to things? Maybe they will change everything. And I'm hearing lots of good things, to be completely honest. They have made tremendous progress with what they're doing. They're changing up a lot of things. And I could imagine there might be a second wave coming. I'm pretty confident there will be. If you look at Ethereum starting around 2015, really, 14, 15, and how long it took until it really took off was maybe 2 or 3 years, 4 years, right? If you want to say, if you look all the way to last 2021, that would be 6 years. Polkadot started 2020, right? So we are now in year 3 of Polkadot, if you want. So, and we are in a really tough market environment. So I think I still have positive hopes for them, even though, they have made some mistakes, and it's tricky what they're building, because power chains ultimately compete a little bit with each other. They're sort of building, imagine you have built Ethereum on top of Ethereum on top of Ethereum in a way, right? That's at least sometimes how the ecosystem dynamics feel like between the power chains. So yeah, I think they have to figure a few things out, but I still see a good way forward for them.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. I mean, I hadn't sort of been keeping up with it, and I think there's just so much stuff happening in the ETH ecosystem. And even I'm sort of struggling to keep up with all the things that are happening in the ETH ecosystem, right? All the L2s that are coming up. I think you mentioned layer 0, those that sort of interoperates with all the other blockchains. But how do you sort of see us moving then as an investor with your investor hat on? Do you see a multi-chain world? Are you sort of seeing network effects converging to sort of one sort of platform? Like, how are you thinking about these things, and how are you thinking about where to place your bets?
There's different sides to it, I would say. I still am a believer in there's Multicoin wrote this wonderful article in 2018, 2019 maybe. It's called Ethereum and the Seven Dwarfs. So it's mirrored on an article that was written about IBM back in the day. It's called IBM and the Seven Dwarfs. So since the inception of IBM, there have been numerous companies, specifically 7 big ones, that were tech-wise and innovation-wise way ahead of IBM. However, only IBM survived. And something similar seems to be happening with Ethereum, where Ethereum is the representation of IBM, the developer ecosystem, the tooling, everything is just so much further advanced compared to other ecosystems that we will probably see a few more of those faster chains, etc., trying to emerge. But unless you have a really compelling, unique use case like Filecoin or Arweave, that's more about storage, I think it's going to be very hard to compete, because sharding will also come. It's just a matter of years, right? But then the scaling challenge will probably be solved for Ethereum to some degrees. And then for me, it's usually very short-term trends as I see them. The infrastructure plays are driven by VCs because it's the best investment in terms of multiples, because the network effects are so large that you can really, sort of play the same game every time over and over again. We saw Move coming and all the others, and I think they're playing their part in the ecosystem, and they drive a new group into crypto. But ultimately, if you look at the numbers of developers for Solana and others, some of them leave again, some of them will just move to ETH. So ultimately, all of these new chains are somewhat good as well, because they will bring new thoughts, new innovation to the ecosystem. But in a very long run, I would say Ethereum is probably by far my best bet, next to Bitcoin, of course, for the stored value and security, just because it's been around the longest, right? So besides that, I think we will see more and more infrastructure plays. I'm definitely a big believer in ZK and Starkware and other ZK chains. I think that's going to be interesting to observe, because they're enabling completely new range of use cases. Like a lot of industrial use cases that we have looked at in the past are only going to be able to be built because of those ZK technology chains, because of transaction privacy, essentially. So I think that will play a massive role. But other than that, I think most of these, if we would have the same conversation again in 10 years, I would make the assumption, even though it is an assumption, that many of the chains are going to be sort of a thing of the past, and there will be only a few standing. When it comes to interoperability, I still believe the original vision was interesting, where you said with Polkadot you have different sort of you have general purpose chains and you have specific purpose chains, right? And app chains are the new thing, right? App chains is similar to a power chain, and you can plug and play them. You can custom build them to what you need exactly. And I think it's an interesting narrative. There's a new modular thinking around it. If you think from what is needed in the future to really onboard the original version of crypto and blockchain is to somewhat decentralize the internet to its original vision, right? So internet was built by a military organization, and they didn't really think about the design challenges that you would need in order to make e-commerce happen and to make IP copying happen, right? So I think all of these things would play into it. From an investor perspective, yeah, I believe it's often short-term gains versus long-term conviction, right? So I wouldn't say I'm not investing in some of these chains. I would look at them, and L2s also have they also make sense. Algorand and Optimism, they're all really great. Sort of, I think I see them like they bridge a certain time window in order to achieve a new innovation stack, application stack. But that's all they do. So yeah, interoperability will happen natively, I think. So I'm not entirely sure where that position will be, but I think it will keep converging into new things. That's the beauty of crypto, right? It changes very quickly every day.
No, it's super exciting, right? I mean, just to hear you sort of talk. I mean, it can go in sort of many different directions, but I think more importantly is that people are building in the space, and it just feels like there is a lot of activity, regardless of price action, right? And so I think fundamentally, I think we still have to be relatively bullish about where we're sort of going with all of this. I wanted to ask you just quickly as well. I think I saw in your profile that you've got this comment underneath saying that you're long DAOs. What's your sort of take on DAOs? And I know you're participating in quite a few DAOs, like tribute DAOs as well. So I've seen Neptune, obviously Punk DAO. Oh, but you're also in Hydra as well, which is a pretty big one. So how are you sort of taking this DAO sort of approach, and where do you sort of see that going? Because I think this is a hot topical sort of piece.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited about the future of DAOs, and I think you have to categorize them in different categories, right? You obviously have like sort of organizational DAOs, which serve big crypto foundations. Near Protocol is a good example, right? Organized as a DAO structure. You have sort of governance DAOs, like you could say Uniswap is a sort of a DAO, but you could argue for and against that. But it's aiming to maybe be in the long term, depending on sort of the ownership shares of the different tokens. So those sort of DAOs or synthetics or some others that are fully organized business units. API3 is organized as a DAO where you have business functions as DAOs within sort of an organization. And then obviously you have investment DAOs, so like we're talking about Punk DAO. I think those are functioning super, super well because they represent indices. So like it started with Metacartel and Tribute Labs, like the DAO, right? The Flamingo DAO is an industry of NFTs, early NFTs. So I think they give great representations of a certain state of the market that is then built as almost like an indice, because the problem with investment DAOs is, if you dive deeper into those two, that the original vision was that a group of people can do better due diligence and find better deals than a VC, which unfortunately is not true because of the challenge of participation and sort of commitment to the DAO, incentivization, and so on. So that didn't really work out. However, it still sets a pretty good, I think the DAO has done more than 150 investments, similar to Metacartel have done loads of investments. So it's still a pretty good, with a certain quality benchmark set indice around across crypto landscape, which is really good. And I think the group that it brings together, the investment DAOs, is super interesting as well. Like just people meeting, and like you have topic specific DAOs like music, NFTs, and fashion, and all these sort of things, like punks in our case, and Punk DAO itself has a reputation, right? And then another topic we looked into is services DAOs, and I think that is still something that needs to be found out if it works. So let's say there's a podcast DAO, right? And all these podcasters working together, trying to get a benefit from working together and amplifying their message, right? That could potentially be interesting. Creating content together, sharing workload, or legal DAOs. But I often also struggle with the problem of coordination. So there we go down to simple again, right? It's hard. Resources are expensive. And if you don't have a central coordinator, it becomes super challenging, because we also tried to build a services DAO ourselves recently and realized that the biggest problems are the humans that are part of it. Because once it comes down to the humans and you don't have a binary, I invest yes or no, or I'm mirroring sort of an organizational structure like synthetics or similar, it becomes more challenging. However, I still believe that DAOs will be sort of the new work way, because we cannot deny that with COVID and sort of more hybrid models, I talk a lot about this to my friends, and the real world of, hey, there's now the expectation of, I want six weeks a year off to, or not off, or like work for anywhere in the world, right? I want to be able to go into the office once or twice a week, maybe 3 times. So like this flexibility is all part of new work. And then that will probably quickly lead to new organizational structures, also in Web2 companies moving to to different setups, right? There's a company in Germany called Trivago. They don't log any hours of employees, and they're a Web2 company that do like online booking for holidays and stuff. And it's all impact based. Like, what is the impact you bring? Do you fulfill your KPIs? And the output is what's measured. And it doesn't matter how you got there, right? So I think all of these things somehow for me I feel like they will lead to some sort of new work that also DAOs will enable. And we're just early, right? Now we are going from investment DAOs, testing incentivization inside of those DAOs. There's Hydra Ventures, there's Punk DAO, many other DAOs are trying similar things. There's just a lot of more new learnings that we need to go through. And I think in a couple of years from now, that more and more things will be organized as DAOs, because the benefit you get from bundling brain power, financial resources, intellect, is just really powerful, while giving humans, or modern humans, the ability to be autonomous, right? To sort of act on their own behalf, feel ownership, similar to like in a startup. But in a startup, the CEO and the leadership team and the VCs own 95% of it, right? Whereas in DAO, you get the opportunity to co-own part of that. So I think, yeah, all of these things are sort of little snippets of I am very, very long DAO, and believe they'll be the future of many organizational structures. To the level of decentralization is arguable, right? It all depends on the sizing and the purpose, the objectives, and so on.
Yeah. No, I'm sort of with you on that too. I think macro-wise, if we sort of look through this, it feels like it's a better fit, a bit of win-win scenario if structured up properly. But I think there's a lot more we can do with tooling to enable some of the coordination efforts that we're sort of going through, right? And teething issues as well. So I think that's sort of an exciting thing to sort of look forward to. No, I think you put a really good perspective on that. And in terms of, sorry, I'm bouncing around a little bit, but just going back a little bit more focused on NFTs, I think you spoke about discovering and hearing of CryptoPunks in 2017, and I think you were sort of super busy with DeFi and all the other protocols. What was your first sort of dip into NFTs? Do you remember what your first NFT was and why you started sort of dabbling into NFTs a little bit further? And when was that?
I think I had a crypto kitty from a friend, which I didn't really pay attention to, which he just sent me. Like, hey, take a look just to learn a bit more about them. But yeah, I didn't pay too much attention, to be honest. I was just like, okay, this is a bit silly. Like, what's the point? Unless it's like, yeah. I just didn't fully get it back then, to be completely honest. I was just like, yeah, I'm not yet sure I can see the use case of it. But this often happens in crypto when you don't take a deeper look, right? And I think proper NFT I had was from this blockchain game called Commerce. So they tried to build a sort of on-chain game. They were one of the first ones actually on Polygon. And they launched this little spaceships that you could play in a game against others, and everything was on-chain. It was like a multiplayer on-chain game. I think this was end of 2020, beginning of 21. And yeah, I then started following and looking at NFT ecosystem in more depth. And lots of my friends obviously got into Bored Apes and those early art blocks days and stuff like this. And yeah, I started picking up a few things here and there, but just for like purely as an investment, not really paying attention. And that's around the time when I also said, okay, it was like maybe April 21, that I said, okay, I'm looking into maybe getting my punk now, right? And I just said, I want my forever punk, and I don't care how long it takes. And yeah, it took me 8-9 months, and I think I bought it end of 21 And I finally found someone who has one that I liked and that fit my purpose.
Coming from your sort of background, deep into data, altcoins, crypto, and obviously very intellectual about the sort of space as well. When you saw these pixelated JPEGs, especially your Punk, what was it about Punks that drew you to it? Like about the collection and about the sort of piece? Like what sort of drew you to that?
For me, it was that at some point I started looking really in depth into it and where they came from. I talked to some of the first of the moderators of the Punk Discord, some of the people that originally 2017 mentioned it to me, and then I go back to them like, hey, let's have a chat. I want to know more about it now. Tell me about it, right? I want to learn. Tell me everything. And then I started understanding sort of the cultural relevance of it, the beauty of on-chain representations of this sort of thing. Pixelated just such a depth relating to like the first wave of sort of online or like games in general, computer gaming, right? That I could relate to. And yeah, it's simply also the community, I think. That is something that really drew me to it. And for me, it has this sort of vibe of like OG punks that were sort of particular style, I would say. Of course, there's exceptions, but many are quite humble. They really care about the space. They like to build as well, try to contribute, right? Because obviously they come with a price tag. Many that bought them early haven't sold any or just a few, maybe to make some profits. Obviously, there's some prominent Twitter influencers and so on that use them. But I think generally that most punks I've met and talked to at punk meetups along the way have been super cool, nice people. They are builders in the space. They're humble. They try to support the space. They're here for the long run. And I think that definition of a community member really resonated with me because that's sort of, I've been through 2 or 3 waves now, bull and bears. I've been here for a little while. There's many ups and downs and frustrations and that thing, but we're all still standing and we're moving forward. And now, it's that sort of time again, but not nearly as bad, or maybe don't call it bad, but not nearly similar to what it was maybe in the previous cycles.
And you said that it took you 6 to 9 months of looking at punks before you finally got yours. What was the sort of journey like? Were you in the Punk Discord, or were you just literally refreshing the CryptoPunk, marketplace every day? Like, and what other traits were you looking at too? Were you just fixated on the luxurious beard? Like, what sort of traits were you sort of looking at?
I was pretty much fixated on the beard and glasses. So I wanted one with black beard and glasses, or like my sort of my bandana thing. Yeah, so I was fixated on that eyes, beard, black combination. And yeah, there was only three or four in total. Right, that's it. And then I sort of tried to find out how to buy a gun and everything, what I would need to find out. And then it was more hunt. I was just literally trying to write people over and over again that had deep access to sellers, like Punk OTC, but also others just from the CryptoPunk community that I knew already before, and just asking again every month. I would like, hey, have you heard of anyone selling any of these for, Yeah, I mean, obviously there's this similar one with a hoodie, which I think is also interesting. That could be like the next step potentially. I've been eyeing one of those. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm not sure yet. I'm ready to wear a hoodie all the time.
Why not the normal Blackbeard? Because they're very similar. Because my previous punk had a normal Blackbeard, and I always used to look at the luxurious beard, and the Lux beard always used to carry a bit of a premium than the normal Blackbeard. And they're not too dissimilar in terms of supply. So the Lux beard has got 286 in the collection. Normal Blackbeard's 289 in the collection. But right now the floor price is only about 4 ETH difference. But were you looking at the normal Blackbeard at all, or was it just luxury beard? That was it.
For me, it just didn't really resonate with me in terms of it looked a bit too clean. A bit too clean, if that makes sense. You can see my beard is a bit more scruffy.
Yeah, I can see that. No, that's cool.
Yeah, that's it. Simple as that. Yeah.
Nice. No, love listening to these sort of punk stories about how people go about selecting it, and everybody vibes with something a little bit different, right? So, which is super interesting. And if money wasn't an issue for you, do you have like a dream punk in mind? Would it be that hoodie Luxbeard one that you were talking about, or would it be something else?
Probably be a hoodie Luxbeard one. I mean, you can obviously always add one on top, right? But like have it in something else. But I think the hoodie Luxbeard was the one that I was looking at mostly, to be honest. Yeah, I think that's probably it.
There's the one with it's listed now. It's Luxbeard hoodie and 3D glasses. That is that is a pretty amazing combo. And like when you look across, I guess the punk community, do you have any favorite punks that come to mind for you?
Yeah, obviously love 6529. It's really love how he writes and how deep he goes and how well sort of prepared his posts are. Yeah, I love the founder of PeopleSwap. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah, Nifty
Nifty
Notes.
Note.
Yeah.
Note, yeah. Really like him. And the guy was doing statistics. What's his name?
NFT Stats. Sam.
Yeah, he stats. Yeah. Good guy. Yeah, I think those are like top three probably. Yeah, I would say.
No, that's cool. And I think you sort of mentioned and maybe described a little bit of it before in terms of why you were interested in getting a CryptoPunk. But I mean, how would you describe punk culture in KISS terms if you had to explain it to somebody?
It's comparable to like a counterculture movement, similar to maybe punks that live on the street, if you want. That's sort of where this comes from. That are rebelling against something, right? Just by working in blockchain and crypto, they rebel against a certain state of a system or of technology that it is right now, and they're doing something to drive society and the world and technology forward to a new state, right? And I think that's what the punk culture really represents, I feel like.
Yeah, I think really well said and put. And I think counterculture is always a really nice fit for punks. It's kind of strange. I had a haircut today. My barber and I were just having a random conversation about counterculture. But it was interesting because he was an older guy, but he was talking about history and all those other elements, and he was talking about certain things, activities that just built communities around countercultural aspects. And so I think surfing had a very strong counterculture movement behind it. There was skateboarding, very rebellious component to it. Elements of music, in the past that were pushing the boundaries about about whatever it is that they sort of were believed to be true, and sort of really rock the space. And I sort of feel like CryptoPunks are right in the thick of that, right? Where we're here, we're real believers in what this brings, and obviously we've got a bigger sort of I think global sort of counterparty to basically combat against. And so I think counterculture is really a really huge word for CryptoPunks and our culture.
What made you identify with punks originally, if I may ask?
For me, it was a little bit of that. I think it was a very strong signal. If you wanted to be in Web3 and you were taking it seriously, you would need to be a punk, because I think that sort of represents who you are and what your values are. And I think when there is a lot of pseudonymous and anonymity in the space, and you're trying to build trust and you're trying to build a brand behind it, I think there is no other way, or no better way of doing that other than sort of a punk. And it's not. And look, just because you own a punk doesn't necessarily mean that you're a punk, but I think it's part of the way through. I think it's almost like if you know, right? Other punks will know what a punk really represents. To the normal commoner on the street, they just wouldn't get it, right? And so, but I think if you've got a real commitment to sort of Web3, in my view, it's like, well, and which I do, and I'm a big believer in the space. I just had to have a punk, and I just vibe with it too. Similar to you with all the people and stuff that I've met all the time. They just felt a little bit more mature, and maybe from the same vintage as us too, right? I think appreciate just basically nerding out on different things, right? So it's just intellectually curious and pushing the boundaries about what's sort of possible. And I think, it was sort of inspiring for me just to be part of it, right?
What's sort of like the age range that punks are sort of averaging?
Yeah, my guess would be mid to late 40s. I think we came up, because it's pixelated. Most of us probably it hits home with us because we grew up playing video games like Nintendo, Mario, Tetris, all those bits and pieces, and I think it just has that nice nostalgic feeling to it. And I think most of the time we nerd out on like trading collectibles and basketball cards and all these cultural elements, and I think that's why a lot of us, even though we're sort of globally diverse, we all connect on those key elements, right? What about you? Like, what do you sort of think our age demographic is?
Yeah, I think I can relate to that. I think like I would say mid 30s to 50s, probably in that range. Maybe a certain maturity, maybe, and there could be younger people that are like maybe mid 20 that have a certain maturity. That would more like I would add to your observation saying the maturity of a 40 to 45-year-old, but that could be at any age range, right? Because that's sort of how I see the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other side too is like, the entry price for a CryptoPunk right now is not cheap, right? So, you'd have to be somewhat established to get a ticket in, unless you were super early. And to be super early, you'd need to be in that sort of, age range anyway, right? So, which sort of makes it, yeah. And if you could pass on a message to the next owner of Punk7865, what would you like to say to him?
Of my punk, I don't know if there's ever going to be a next owner, but yeah, carry it with pride, and do it well.
Perfect. Well said, Simon. This was super enjoyable, mate. Thank you so much for joining Punkcast. Any sort of final closing comments on your side, and what's the best way for people to find you?
Just Twitter, simply Simon 77. You can find me. I think similar handle on Discord. Yeah, that's fine for me. Reach out. Any startup founders can reach out to us. Anyone with an interesting conversation about DAOs or venture investors. That's sort of our people. Yeah, or if you have a great idea for Web3 and DAOs, please reach out. Like with Hydra Ventures, we're looking into incubating DAOs, new venture DAOs. So if you have a great idea and you want to do it full time and you really thrive for it and you're 100%, 150% with that idea, if you're convinced of it, please reach out. That would be great.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Simon, and hope to catch you at one of these events soon. But guys, that wraps up another episode of Punkcast for the week, and we'll be back next week with another punk. Bye for now.